What's up, everybody? Mel here. Hopefully, y'all can hear me. We're not going to do it with a lot of music tonight. We're going to go ahead and do a little bit of something different. Tonight, we're actually doing a themed podcast as opposed to me just randomly talking about stuff in the gaming industry and whatnot. We have a special guest with us tonight, and that is my buddy Lolidragon. Lolly, say hello.
Hello.
I want to make sure everybody can hear Lolly, so could you hear him just then? Lolly, say something so they can hear you.
Ollie says something.
Can everybody hear him? Sounded like a pop.
I sound like a pop.
Say something now. I'm adjusting the volume out.
Sure thing.
Okay, yeah, they got you. All right. Lollipop. Oh, I got you, Knack. What's up? Okay, so one of the things that a lot of people know about me, and a lot of people may, or hold on, you know what? We're just going to change one thing. Bear with me for a sec. Usually don't have guests on, so I usually have voice to talk, or this set on push to talk. We're just going to change one thing. Hang on one second. I'm just making a change to some settings here.
Righto.
How y'all doing? Hope you're having a good night. Hope you're having a good weekend. Okay. Should be good. Lolly, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right, so cool. All right, so now everybody can hear me at the same time, and I don't have to do the push to talk thing because I'm going to be honest, I'm going to forget to do that half the time. So, so one of the things that a lot of you know about me, and some of you maybe don't, is that I am a longtime collector of things. I collect comic books. I have a coin collection that we're not going to go into too much tonight because it's literally in the crawl space, and I'm not going to go in there and get it out. That would be another adventure. That would probably result in me going to the emergency room because it's dark and I'm not going to put the lights on. But I also collect Magic the Gathering cards, and for anybody that is in my Discord, you'll seen in the YouTube channel section a lot of videos that I recommend about watching from a channel called Alpha Investments. Now, the guy that runs that channel, Rudy, knows a lot about investing. He was actually a stockbroker before he became involved in the hobby industry, and he's always been a fan of Magic the Gathering. In fact, the guy probably has so much in stock that he's invested into Magic. Now, I'm not talking about actual stocks, I'm talking about just the cards and the boxes of sealed product that he has. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, not about him specifically, but about that. And we're going to talk about some of that, and I'm going to talk about the comic book market and the sports card market a little bit as well. But there's other types of collecting too that are out there. Now, I know one of my friends, very good. Yeah, you all know her, you all love her, I'm sure, because she's amazing. Krev has a really cool Beanie Baby collection that is still something a lot of people are like, Beanie Babies. There, if you have a good collection and you kept it in good order, that can be worth quite a bit of money. Also, for those of you out there who collected Pokemon cards, if you have the very first edition Pokemon cards from like the early, like the late 90s, some of the early ones that were even printed by Wizards of the Coast back in the day, those are worth still quite a bit of money. A lot of people kind of thought that Pokemon would die out. And yes, in the recent years, the Pokemon company, Nintendo, actually, both of them, really made a move to reprint cards so that they would be more affordable. But still, the very first editions, like that first edition Charizard, still carries quite a bit of financial weight behind it. And that's one of the things that I always recommend people like, don't throw out your collectibles because you never know when they're going to become actually worth money, and that could be something that, like, I'll tell you right now, my biggest collection, the biggest collection I have, because it doesn't take up a lot of space, is Magic the Gathering. And we're going to pull out a couple of things just to give you guys an example. I know a lot of you have seen me play this on Arena, which is on the new computer game, but the original cards, see if this will focus, like this. Come on, focus for me, like that. We have Necropotence. Now, this is not actually a very expensive card. This card, but this is a powerful card. There's a difference between collecting cards for power, and then let's say, hold on, we'll find one here that's a card like this. Now, this This is called Yogma Swill. Now, this card initially I got in a pack for $4. At the time, it was actually $3.50 because that's what Magic used to be, the price of it back in the late 90s. Now, that card itself now is worth somewhere around $60 to $75 and it's never going to be reprinted. So this card is always going to have a value attached to it that will always appreciate. So 10 years from now, this will be worth maybe, let's say, $150, $200, and so on and so forth. It's not going to go up as much as another card. Now, we're going to pull out something now. And what I'm going to show you is a proxy because I actually sold my originals because I needed money at the time. I know, Melly did it for the money. I know. Y'all know that. But we're going to show you guys what I'm talking about so that some of y'all have an idea of what we're discussing here. And this is, for instance, a card like this. Let's see, get a good focus on that. This is something that's called a Mox Jet. Now, this is a proxy. This is not an actual Mox Jet. I had this probably 20 years ago. I had a copy of this card, and at the time, I think it was something that was running in the mid, almost $100 at the time. I think I traded a bunch of cards to get one, and now if you have one black bordered like this from beta or alpha, you're going to be looking at a couple of thousand to almost $10,000 depending upon its grade. If you have a card like Black Lotus, which is the kind of the sacred, one of the most sought after cards in the game, probably the most sought after card of all of TC gaming. If you have one that's graded gem, and I'll talk about grading in a minute, gem 10 or plus by PSA DNA or even Beckett, you're looking at having something that's worth a minimum of $15,000 to $20,000 or more. There are some that are gem 10 that are from alpha or beta, which are extremely rare and hard to get. That could be worth in excess of $20,000 upwards. I think the highest one sold for almost $90,000. So you're talking about enough money to literally put a down payment on a house or even buy a full-on, plot of land somewhere. So these are the things that when we get into this kind of stuff, you really have a lot of, it's worth it to talk about this because a lot of people who are in the same field that we are in, like we all play games, we all do things like D&D or Magic the Gathering, and a lot of these things have collectible weight. For instance, I know people who have some D&D books that go back to first, second editions that are maybe limited edition books. They release those every now and then that are worth quite a bit of money because they print special editions, anniversary editions, and these things come out. Now, what I talk about when I say, grading and things like that, any one of the things that I have mentioned, be it Beanie Babies or comic books, sports cards, all of these things have a grading. There are companies out there that go and authenticate the condition, and they authenticate the basic cards that they're real, that the items that you have, that they're actually real. They certify them. And because they certify them, in many cases, like if let's say you go out and you have, let's say you were in the 90s and you went out and you had Michael Jordan's, his rookie basketball card with and his autograph on it. Okay. Well, first of all, you have to get the autograph authenticated. It doesn't matter if you were there, had somebody take a picture of you, they will have to still autograph it. So companies like Beckett and PSA DNA, who are two of the largest ones, they exist to do that. They have people there that actually go through. Their job is to match that up and authenticate the signatures, authenticate the cards, grade the cards on the quality. So does it have a bent edge? Does it have a ding on it? Does it have like a scratch on the surface? And they give you a grading on it. The higher the grade, the more valuable the thing is, and the more money you can command for it at auction. Most of the time, you're going to see these things go like a gem, like you're not going to, if I had like a gem 10 Black Lotus, I wouldn't be selling that on eBay. That would actually go to a real auction house where they would actually sell that, and I would actually get the more of the money that I wanted for that. That's not like an eBay transaction. You could do that, but most of the time you're not going to see that kind of passing on eBay as much as you'll see like the other stuff. Now, of course, with some of this stuff, if it's very valuable, obviously you're going to either want to make a decision as to whether or not you want to hold on to it or things like that. There's actually, we're going to get into this. I'm going to let Lolly talk a little bit more about this because he does also collect a lot of Legos. So when that comes into that, we'll have him talk about that. But that's a little idea about grading and things. So if you have things like that, you want to get them graded. Now, there are other things that people collect, and antiques, firearms, sometimes antique firearms. They're not exclusive. They're not mutually exclusive. So one of the reasons Lolly joined me today is because Lolly actually does a lot of antiquing, so to speak. He buys a lot of different antiques. At times, he's always interested in history. I mean, technically speaking, while he hasn't directly have a formal education in history, I believe he's probably read enough history books to qualify as a historian in and of itself, but definitely has all the skills and knowledge I would imagine that one would need to qualify as a military weapons historian. So I'm going to kick this off to Lolly and let him tell a very interesting story that he told me a long time ago. But Lolly, why don't you go ahead and pick this up now?
Well, first off, you flatter me so. um, the story he's referring to happened about when I was 12 years old. I was at this time getting kind of started in collecting military, not antiques, but World War II items. I guess you can't really count them as antique because it's not even 100 years old yet. But I went with my mother one time to pick up a dresser she was getting from Craigslist. And it was from this older couple that did buying and reselling of antiques and furnitures and stuff like that. And when we got there, being a 12-year-old kid, I'm not interested in going to pick up stuff with my mother. It's not what I want to do. But I saw sitting out in their storage lockers where they sold their stuff from, they had a more modern military web gear belt, and so I acquired about it, considering I had money and it was military and caught my attention. And they told me their son, who was in his, I would say, late 20s at the time, it belonged to him, and he did the same thing. And so they would give him a ring to see how much he wanted for it. So while we waited, they told us to have a look around and see if there's anything else that caught my eye. And shortly after that, I found a old World War II footlocker. And they're like, you must really be into this military stuff. You want to see the other stuff we have? Naturally, I said yes. And they showed me all their other military stuff they had, and I naturally ended up buying it all for really good prices, I would say. But the one thing was, the guy's like, we have another storage locker over here, and there's something in there you are really going to like if you like all this stuff. And so we went over there and looked, and it was a 40-pound suitcase, and inside of it was a spy telegraph, is what he called it. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. How much do you want for it? And he's like, I'll sell it to you for $30. So I'm like, well, I spent all my money on the other stuff. Mother, you got $30 for me? I can pay you back later. Naturally, she agreed, and well, I went home with it. It sat on that same footlocker as my nightstand for it sat on there for 4 years, just looking pretty. Every now and then I would take it out, mess with it, look around, dust it off. And one day when I was about 16, I had gotten curious about what it was worth. So I went and tried to do as much research as I possibly could, and it turned out to be a British SOE, if anyone knows what the SOE is, spy telegraph that was issued to was it operatives that would drop into Germany, and it was designed to look like a piece of luggage so they could kind of easily transport it without being noticed. And saw the price someone had sold one for, and was like, well then, I'm going to put this on eBay to see what I can get for it. Not even like 2 days after I had put it on eBay, I had a email come to me from a man in the Netherlands saying that he would like to purchase it for his museum, because he had I would say a military communications museum, I believe is what it was. And we agreed to a price, and I sold this $30 telegraph that I bought to him for $4,000. And that was one of the hallmarks of my collecting, but ultimately selling that telegraph to him for $4,000 led to the second, or I would even say the best purchase I had ever made. by gaining that money. So when I turned 15, I was purchased my first gun simply because I showed enough interest, and it was a Mosin gun. It's spent $120 on it. It's a relatively cheap rifle, not anymore. But when I was 16, I was still interested in finding guns, and since I had all this money, I decided to go look to see what I could find. And I went to Cabela's, which, if anyone knows what Cabela's is, it's a sporting store. You can buy guns, fishing stuff, boats, even a lot of stuff. It's a huge store. So I went there with my father and was looking around. And I'm like, I think 1911s are cool. I want to inquire to this man while my father's using the restroom if any of these are World War II issue. Being a 16-year-old kid acquiring about a handgun, you have to be 21 to purchase a handgun. He didn't even look me in the eye. He just said probably, shrugged his shoulders, and walked off. Okay, that's a little rude. So I waited for my father to come back, and I asked him to ask the man. Well, my father being over the age of 21, he was more than delighted to help my father. So we were looking around, and they got out the book that has all the serial numbers in it for the ranges, and the guy found one. Is like, this one looks like a serial number, but it turned out a 1918 manufacturer. Don't know how you screwed that up, but he did. So we went back out there to look around again, and the stranger, who was waiting on his friend to come in on a flight and just had time to kill, walked up and said, "What are you guys looking for?" And we're like, "Oh, I'm looking to see if they have any World War II 1911s." And he's like, pointed down and said, "Union Switch and Signal. I think they manufactured 1911s during World War II." I never had heard of it because I was a novice in this. And so we picked it up and we took it to the desk, and he disassembled it to make sure all the parts were original. And they were minus one part, the barrel bushing, but I can't really complain. And we were looking it over, and these guys are like, "Man," the people that work there are like, "Man, you're very knowledgeable about this. Hold on, we're going to go grab a card to get your number." And while they were doing that, he looked at me, he pointed at the blue book value, and the blue book value stated it was in excess of $5,000 in fantastic condition. This one, it's not in fantastic condition, but they had it priced at $1,300. So me being naturally like, well, I know a good deal when I see one, said, "Guess who's buying that 1911?" The guy and I said our goodbyes, and he went on his way, and just the most random encounter. So we went to the back room where they do the deals, and the guy was like, "So this is what you want?" My dad's like, "What's the best deal you can do with me?" And he's like, "I'll take $100 off for tax." So $1,300 out the door for a gun. I would say that's valued today at about $3,000, all from buying that $130 telegraph on one day on a whim. And naturally, since that $30 was spent on me by my parents, and when I sold it, I treated them to some Olive Garden for a thank you.
You got to treat people to Olive Garden once in a while. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. That's a pretty fantastic deal. Now, what are some of the other pieces that you're very proud of in your collection from a history standpoint and from a
Let's see.
collectible standpoint? Because I know you have a few.
I have quite a few World War II helmets and even World War I helmets. I'm trying to look around to see. I have a Japanese officer's sword, and I got that from Cabela's as well, but it came with an Arasaka and a bayonet as a package deal. I didn't get like a splendid deal on it. I think that came out to about $1,100, which the swords are probably about $700 in value today. So with an Arasaka and a nice bayonet, it's an okay deal. I wasn't expecting to get too much. Most of the stuff that I have like the most pride in that I've collected is now currently in my gun collection. So I got everything from way too many Mosin Nagants because they're cheap to a couple Arasakas now, a Garand, Nambu Type 14, stuff like that.
That's the one that has the clamshell with it, right? That you bought that time.
Yeah. Yeah, it came with 2 extra magazines, a clamshell holster. It's got matching numbers on it minus the magazines. But
Now, were those ones
that
that saw service in the war?
Yes, they were the most issued, or not even issued. I believe they had to purchase them themselves secondhand. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while. But they were the most widely used sidearm by the Japanese forces during World War II. The one that I have collected is actually from 1929, so it's 4 years after it was initially put into service or designed, and is considered one of the more desirable variants.
Yes, and I remember you showing me pictures of that. It's unfortunate about that French made gun that you had that time.
Yeah, and yeah, stuff like that happens.
Yeah. Now, Lolly, I want to ask you another question if I can, because I know that we both collect Legos, but you have a fairly extensive Lego collection.
Most of my collection, I had collected Legos a long time ago when I was probably 9 or 10, first getting into them. I've collected. Now that I think about it, I've collected things pretty much my whole life. I started off with Thomas the Trains, I believe, but
And of course, we have the famous Thomas the Famous.
yeah, Thomas the Thomas. I remember that was a good picture.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but my Lego collection I have now is extensively smaller than what it could have been because sometime in my teens I decided to sell them all, which was a foolish mistake.
Yeah,
But
because Legos now. This is why I'm segueing into this. Legos now. So if you are in the let's say if you're in your mid to late 30s, early 40s, Legos from when we were kids actually managed to not only hold their value, but in many cases actually appreciate to the point where people are paying good money for even a single brick of a Lego because they just don't make them anymore. And people are looking to replace parts of old sets or people just collect them. And Legos have gone up so much in value over the last couple of years that it's literally, if you go out and buy a Lego set, like the sets themselves are all limited edition. So let's look at Star Wars sets, for example. Those are probably some of the most collectible Lego sets. Would you not agree with me, Lolly?
no, I mean Star Wars sets are all I have now. But yeah, they're very collectible.
Yeah, because Lego has this thing. Any one of the sets that you buy now, they have a limited edition run on them. So, for instance, they had Minecraft sets, which I built. Some of you remember a year or two ago when I was building Minecraft sets. They don't make them anymore. The sets that I had, they're out of print. And now those sets, because I kept them all together and I kept all the instructions with them. By the way, you don't have to keep the boxes for the Legos, but as long as you keep the instructions and the sets together, like all the individual pieces, yeah, you know, definitely invest in some Tupperware and some Ziploc bags with label tape so that you can keep track of what you have. But
Honestly, though, I do keep the boxes.
yeah, I mean, I keep the boxes
Yeah,
too because
just collapse them and stuff them somewhere nice and flat.
absolutely. Well, I recommend doing that with like anything. Like a lot of you may see the statues I have behind me. Those are the same thing I do with that. I have all the boxes set just in case they go up. Target has a good stock of clear top. Yes, they usually do. But yeah, there's a lot of things like that that we have. Now, I mean, like one of the big things that now I know a lot of people here are probably familiar with manga, and so graphic novels, of course, in the United States is generally. Now, I know a lot of people don't really buy the paperback. Well, I want to say this: people don't collect them as much as they used to because sometime around the late 80s, early 90s, everybody started buying every single first edition or big event comic book in multiple copies so they would think they were investing in them. The fact of the matter is, since everybody did that and now pretty much still has them, the rarity of comic books went down because mothers weren't throwing them out in the garbage anymore. So your best prices for comics basically come in the early 80s and back, with the golden age still being in the 50s and 60s for most books and 70s to an extent. But recently, what they've been doing, and I want to say this is more recent, is now they've, for the last, I'd say, 10 years, the companies have been releasing, of course, still new books and everything like that. Well, a couple of years ago, Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man came to an end, and then we had a more limited series called The Superior Spider-Man, which I'm sure those of you Marvel fans out there will know. And I'm using Marvel books specifically. I'll talk about the DC issue because I really think this all came to a head with the death of Superman. Because I don't think there's anybody I know that didn't grow up, at least in the 90s, that doesn't have at least one copy of The Death of Superman somewhere in their collection. Because everybody thought it was going to be worth like thousands and thousands of dollars. Because everybody still has them, it's still worth less than $10. So let's just discuss this because there's something I want to mention key about Marvel and some of the DC comics that have become movies. We'll get into that in a minute. But what they did is they started releasing. So when they released the Amazing Spider-Man again, there was the mass market edition, the first edition that came out. Now, as you can imagine, since that was available pretty much at every store and everybody has copies, that's not the one that's limited edition. But then they would start issuing variant covers like this. Now, this is done by a specific artist, that Scotty, that does these kind of like what they call like baby covers. And they would have yes, you did, Shiro. They would have a lot of different variants like this. Now, this is, of course, a more limited run of this particular cover than, yes, there's so many of these, but they have variants of this. Now, these would be worth a little bit more than the standard, like first or second print runs of the commercial cover, which we'll call the mass release cover. But then they have other variants. Some of them are Deadpool. Deadpool is on every variant of every like first edition they always have a Deadpool cover. Then they have these blank covers. Sometimes they'll do a sketch cover. Now, the sketch covers are usually the most valuable. The other one they do is what they call the Comic Book Retailers Alliance, Cobra variants. And I have one of those here from when I owned a store. Some of you may or may not know, but I did own a comic and trading card game. I owned a hobby store a couple of years ago. Now, this is one of the variants that I got as a result of that. Now, I don't have a huge comic. Comics are not a huge part of my collection. I do have a bunch from when I was a kid, and a few here and there. Like I have the original, like the Infinity War Gauntlet that's going on, and right now I have all the original run of the Infinity War from when that happened, the Infinity Gauntlet series from when that happened. So, because of those movies, and this is where I'm going to segue into the movies now. A lot of the comics that are being made into movies, like Wonder Woman, the fact that it was made into a movie increase the value of those books because of the popularity. The same thing with Deadpool. For a long time, Deadpool, whose first appearance is like in I think it's like issue 80, 89 of the New Mutants, was like a $7 book, right? Then Deadpool came out, and because it was a success and because everybody loved it, that book skyrocketed in value. Now, of course, it's going to take a spike, but it then eventually leveled out. But it's still much more valuable now, much more desirable than it was back then. And a lot of people, 98. Yes, thank you, Ciro. Get my numbers mixed up sometimes. Don't judge me. But still, like there's a lot of different. You'll see that happen a lot now, especially with the Infinity Gauntlet series. I have all of the issues shot up in price now that Marvel was making books based on those movies. There are or movies based on those books, they shot up in value. But the thing that they do now is a lot of these things. So like they'll run an arc. Let's look at Batman, for example, Death in the Family. Really great storyline, really great art. Yeah, I know, Billy. I know. Believe me, I sold half of my collection off a couple of years ago when I was like liquidating things in the house. Believe me, there's a lot to liquidate at times. But one of the things is what they do now is they'll run arcs like this arc that'll last 6 months to a year, and then they'll consolidate all of them into a graphic novel to make it available to the mass market. So at any given point, you can go out now and say, well, I want to read this story arc. Well, you could buy it easily off of Amazon or at Barnes & Noble. And I highly recommend going to Barnes because Barnes sometimes keeps things on shelves for very long. So even when these things start appreciating in value, you could still get them at book value, or not book value, at the actual print value on the back of the book for a regular price, even though they might be worth more of that. I always recommend checking out things. I'm actually going to give you guys a little bit of a tip. If you are looking at investing in something or buying something for collectability purposes, and you know it's worth a little bit of money, one of the things that I'm going to say you could do that with is more easily is magic. The best thing is Target or a store like Target, because Target buys things en masse, okay? And they keep things on shelves, usually at the front of the store. Now, there were times where sets like I'm going to use this for those of you that know Magic, you'll understand, but I'm going to explain the whole thing so you all understand. A couple of years ago in 2012, there was a set released in Magic called Scars of Mirrodin. Now, when it came out, it retailed normal retail, which was $4 a pack. They had these things called fat packs, which are like 12 packs, and you get a book with all the different cards in it. That gives a little bit of a story behind it. And that comes in a nice card holder with a set of dice. Okay, that sells for about $40. And then, you would be able to get that. And they basically, and some of the booster packs, well, Target stocks these things. They buy them. They just buy them. They don't care about the collectability. They buy them just to put them on the shelves, just to have Magic available for people to buy. These things go out of print. Once they go out of print, as somebody that owned a store, when I would go to my wholesaler or my distributor, right? My distributor's going to have them, but their prices that I can buy them for are no longer going to be at the low price when they first came out, when they were still in print. Now the prices are going to start to go up. So I'm going to have to pay more for those boxes from my distributor. And therefore, I'm going to have to charge a higher price to my customers. So that pack now that was worth $4 6 months ago, a year later, now that it's out of print, now I'm going to have to charge you $5 or $6 because my price, of course, went up. So now I have to still make profit on what I'm selling. Well, the greatest thing about that is I would then just as a collector myself, I'd be like, well, after this, I'm just going to go over to Target when things got way too expensive. And after I sold my store, I would just go over to Target and buy out their stock and then resell it online and make bank on that. Because now, if I were to go out to Target, and there's still some out there that have some sets that are 1 or 2 years out of date because Target doesn't care. They'll slash the prices on them. I'll go in there. They'll be like, it's 50% off. I'll be like, I'm just going to print money because that's what I'm going to do. And that's what happens. But you got to understand also the viability of certain sets. Like, that's how that works. But it's the same thing with like anything, like I would say that has any sort of collectible. Like you look at Pokemon, you look at Yu-Gi-Oh, Buddy Fight, whatever it is, Bushiroad's Buddy Fight system or Vanguard. These are all the hot games on the market right now, depending upon the market you're in. There's even a Dragon Ball Z resurgence in that collectible game. I was there when it died the first time, and now it's come back. It's like zombies; they just keep coming back. But yeah, I mean, these are some of the things that are out there and what you can do. Now, if you want to really get into the investing and stuff like that, when you really get into investing in things like comics and when you have things like Magic or things like that, you want to get in on them when they first come out. But specifically with games like Magic and with any sort of collectible card game, you want to buy, if you're going to buy them, never buy any of the limited edition stuff that's coming out. And I highly recommend, if you really want to get in depth on this, watch Alpha Investments channel. Listen to what Rudy says. Rudy is very knowledgeable in all the stuff that goes on, and he actually gives a lot of actual information that, technically speaking, is why he's kind of banned in some circles within that, because a lot of other retailers don't like him talking about what actually goes on behind the scenes. But he actually does the right thing by actually giving people, consumers, knowledge, which is what I try to do when I talk about games and when I talk about whether or not I think you guys should purchase certain games. Because I want you to spend your money in a smart way so that you don't feel that you're getting the product for that way. Well, he wants you to spend your money. If you're thinking about investing, he's very smart about telling you actually don't invest, because unless you have X amount of money that you can afford to spend without having to mortgage your house, without having to take out lines of credit. And he'll always tell you that if you're going to buy something, make sure you have good enough credit that you have cash back on things. Because obviously, if I'm spending a couple of $1,000s and I get cash back, that's a bigger discount to me on what I'm buying. And then when that has to sit on a shelf and appreciate in value, I'm going to make more money on that in the future. But you have to be willing to go in things for the long run on that. And again, I highly recommend you check him out. And I'm not, I will, as I've said to you guys on this channel, I don't, when I stream and things, I'm not afraid to promote other channels. I'm not afraid to promote other YouTube channels. I have a YouTube channel, but I'm not afraid to promote other things because I try to send people to where they can get the best information. I try to send you guys, when I host people, to where I think you're going to have a good time and where you'll be able to enjoy people. So that's why I always kind of do this thing. Fishy, by the way, we're talking about collectibles and collecting tonight. But Lolly, I'd like you to talk a little about some of your other collections, be it books and things like that, because I know you're into a lot of things. So I'd like you to
Oh,
kind of take over a little bit here too. We're gonna let Lolly talk a little bit about some of the other collections because he has some things. Like I know there's at least one or two of you here that like Gundam models. Fishy. I'm not dropping names or anything, but continue.
are you sure you're not?
Yeah, I know.
I have way too much in terms of collecting going on. I have got Gundam model kits. I have Legos. I have guns, as stated earlier. Uh, Military memorabilia, anime figures, books. Uh, Technically some DVDs, but as far as the Gundam stuff, starting back in like 2012, I started getting into that. Gundam model kits are, well, they're weird because you can find the model kits that originally came out in 1980. They're still being made today. So there's not really any appreciation in value with those unless you find stuff that was limited edition, such as P Bandai releases or anything like the Kawaguchi Pro Shop versions. With books, oh man, books. Most of what I do with books is there's a Texas what's it called, bookstore chain called Half Price Books, and I'll just go there and find what I want. I'd say 95% of my books are based on World War II. So there's that. But typically, what I do with books is not really that much collectible with them in terms of value, unless you're finding first editions of really old books, and those can get really expensive. So I would say if you intend on collecting books, just collect something that you're willing to read. With Lego, like I said earlier, all I have pretty much is Star Wars Lego because I love Star Wars. Anime figures, those can go up a little bit in value, but not too crazy. A lot of them that are made for a lot of them are made like in one or two run batches and then discontinued. Sometimes stuff like Good Smile, they'll re-release them if the demands become high for them. But all in all, I don't know of many that are super valuable simply because they're not something that's made in a limited enough quantity and are more prone to being discarded later on. So other than that, I don't really have much else.
Okay.
Unless you want me to talk about guns again.
We may come back to it. I think Fishy. I think just found a new man crush, but let's see. There's well, no, I mean, I want to actually going into that. Now, for those of you that are out there that are now, I know. By the way, we're gonna do something on model building, and another episode that I'm planning. So I want just take a moment here to talk about some things. We have the getting started with modeling podcast that I'm going to do next week. That's going to be the next Mel show. But then I'm actually going to do an in-depth modeling podcast or hobby podcast. Where Lolly, I'd like you to come back and join me for that because I know when it comes to Gundams, Fishy, I'd like you actually to be a guest on stream with me because you do a lot in terms of the military modeling, and I'm going to talk to Impy about because Impy does a lot of model railroad stuff, and I would like to bring him on. And you guys know that I do a lot of the miniatures and things like that. But I'd like to do an episode with that in 2 weeks where we cover a lot of that stuff as well. And I'd like to bring some of you on if you're up for it to do that and to be on the show and talk a little bit about that. Because I know we could talk about a number of things, and of course we'll go over that. But like I said, next week, a lot of people have asked for it for a while about I want to get started with all this. What do I need to get myself started? So I'm going to cover that next week. And we have some more stuff planned. But I would like to kind of keep the focus on some of this. But one of the things I want to talk about now with collecting is so a lot of you out there, I know a lot of you collect. And we're going to touch on a couple of things. Um, Billy, I don't know if you're still with me, but for those of you that don't, we have a couple of musicians in our, and especially in my Discord, I know we have a couple of really gifted musicians. JMB is an artist. I know he's a musician as well as a stand-up comic. But my buddy Cade Dellis in my Discord is also a musician. I know Billy's actually a professional or a session musician. I'd like to talk to some people about that too as well. Shiro. No, we're talking about multiple kinds of things like that. There's more. There's more. And there's some kits that people have asked me for. Um, I would say we'd bring Wani on as a guest, but I'm not really sure what we'd bring Wani on as a guest for, and I'm pretty sure we'd get banned off of Twitch if we did bring him on as a guest. What do you think about that, Lolly?
Comic relief.
Yeah, comic relief. So my Militaria collection. Yeah, I mean, listen. Yeah, you definitely should talk to Lolly because I think you two would have a good discussion about Militaria one day. Then we could do another episode on that and delve into history a little bit more. Maybe we could even talk Bo into coming on and talking history with us. Who knows? But one of the things I want to say now is, of course, the other half of collecting goes to, well, I've collected things. Now what I want to do, I want to make my I want to make some money off of some of the stuff that I have, and I want to get rid of that. Well, eBay is obviously the easiest way to do that. You could go Craigslist and meet in a parking lot somewhere and hope you don't get shot. Gonna be honest, that's happened a few times in the news. We've all seen that. But I usually tend to go eBay for myself, and the best way I go for pricing, people say to me, "But Mel, how do you price things?" Because you could go on websites like Beckett, or you could go on any one of these other quote unquote accredited price sites. But the problem is those are basically averages, right? The best way to do this is to go on to eBay and go do a search for the item that you want to sell. And you do by the recently sold and see what it sold for. And you want to kind of, I'm going to be honest, you want to see what it sold for at highest. You want to see where it sold for at its lowest. And you want to decide if you want to do a buy it now, see where it sold for on buy it now, as opposed to what people did as an auction. So, for instance, for Magic, it's a lot easier because there's a lot of resources out there. Comic books, to an extent, not that hard either to decide what you want to do. But there are some other things that you want to kind of look at as you're going through these things as well, in terms of selling them on eBay. But one of the things I recommend is first doing some buying, establish a score, and make sure that you always communicate. Now, a lot of this I know because one of the things I do as a job is, I do, IT support for a number of people and businesses. Well, my neighbor across the street buys and sells vintage audio equipment. And as such, I do a lot of work over there, keeping their machines running and whatnot. Biggest thing is important. I learned everything I know from eBay from them, and they make a couple of $100,000 a year just doing that to people. So I mean, that's a pretty good living if you ask me. But they do a lot of things. So I'm going to give you guys some tips on if you want to get into stuff, or if you're collecting things, of where to buy some stuff for good prices. Estate sales, best places to go. Usually the last day of the estate sale, it's usually a company that's doing it. Their job is to just get rid of as much stuff as possible and to make whatever money they can make, which means they don't care about what this thing is selling for on eBay. All they care about is getting rid of the stuff so that the family can move on and they can clear the house out for whatever they want to do with it. Second day is the best way to go. Garage sales are always a good hit or miss. I mean, I've found tons of stuff at garage sales for less than $10 that has been worth in excess of $100, $200, maybe $1,000 over the course of the time I've been doing that myself. And that's really some of the best places. Of course, there's also places to go. For me, Habitat for Humanity is a great place to go because a lot of people just bring in stuff, again, that they can't sell or they just want to get rid of. And first of all, any money you spend at a Habitat for Humanity goes to a good cause. Second, if you get a piece of furniture or whatever there, you can find art pieces, things that are worth a lot of money and that people are basically just giving away for nothing. Again, this is something that seems like you're taking advantage, but you're actually spending the money to give to a good cause. And if you want, you can always go back and make a donation if you feel guilty about it, whatever. But again, if you're looking at flipping stuff to make money from things and to do stuff on eBay, that's one of the things you want. Also, if you're looking for collections, this is a good spot also to find collectibles that might complete your collections or add things to your collection at a valuable price. Never underestimate the power of a secondhand store. That's all I gotta say. Other than that, like really, I feel like there are other areas of that are really, like I said, I know she's very tired, so I didn't really want to ask. I did ask, but I didn't really want her to kind of. Krev has, like I said, Beanie Babies. We found out, we were talking about it one night. She has a tremendous, like, really cool Beanie Baby collection that we're going to price out and see what we could do to help her make some, you know, pay for the new computer and stuff that she's got to get. As well as some other things. But like, there's a lot of things out there that you might have questions on collectability. I have now. I'm going to be opening. I'm going to be changing things around in Discord. So for anybody out there that's interested in collection and finding out if they have values on their collections, or if they have something that's worth money, we're going to try to do our best. And this is why I'm going to say it's a community effort to put up as many informational articles when I open up the collectibles section, which is probably going to be listed near the model section. We're going to kind of put off a hobby section in the Discord, where if you find some interesting articles or things that people might find useful resources, please go ahead and put that. Well, there's some things that are still there, but like, again, it's like people thought the same thing about Pokemon, but there's still a lot of value there if you know what ones to have, and if you've kept them in, good condition. The only one that really hasn't recovered well is the sporting card industry, because baseball, football, basketball cards kind of died in the 80s and 90s, and they never really recovered, with the exception of a couple of rookie cards here and there, unless you have autographs. The collectibles and sports memorabilia come from when you get like a game ball, like you're at the game and you get a ball and you get autographs from people on the team, and then you get that, you put that in a case and you get it certified, because you should always get that stuff certified. And then you put it in a case, because then that becomes valuable. And ironically, the person who has one of the largest collections of that is Geddy Lee, the lead singer of Rush. He has a huge professional baseball collection with, I think, hundreds of balls signed from the, really, I know I don't say things right. We'll get over that. I said balls. He has hundreds of balls signed from Major League Baseball players over the years that he has in this room in his house, that are all signed and kept in this temperature-controlled room, because he's the lead singer of Rush, so he can afford to have that. That's kind of his passion thing. But everybody I know, like almost everybody out there, has something that they're passionate about collecting. I know, Shiro, I know. But the one thing I have to say is, it's one of the things as a community I'm looking to expand into. I know a lot of you out there have a lot of collections and things like that. Some of us have good connections with other people, and that's one of the things that this Discord is about, and this community is about. I know this was a little bit more of an impromptu thing, and I'm going to tell you what happened. I ended up getting stuck at work today, so we're going to kind of go into a little casual mode, and I'll be chatting with Lolly here, and you guys taking some questions back and forth too. So we're getting to that part of this podcast, but I really wanted to. I got stuck at work this weekend on doing stuff that I didn't think it was going to take 2 days, so I just had a little bit of a long day. Took a nap before, got some food, came back. And now I wanted to do this because balls relate to boobs with some factor of correlate. Of course, Knack. You and your boob fetish. One side for catalog and collectors.com. Yes. Thank you, Shiro, for that. And we'll put that link in there. You use it for comics? We need to talk comics one day, my friend. Billy, I don't know if you're still there, but if you're willing to do the music, if you're willing to do a music thing with me, let me know. I'd like to actually talk to some people about doing some interesting podcasts and things like that. Everyone loves boobs. This is what it's going to turn into, a boob love session right now. I know everybody does. Nobody gets upset with boobs. Okay, I've never seen people go, "Damn it."
Everybody loves you, Mel, and you're the biggest boob we know.
Thank you. Actually, let me ask you a question, Lolly. Of all the guns that you've had in your collection, what's your absolute favorite piece? Is it that 1911, or what is it?
I say to everyone in my family that 1911 will go with me to the grave. Okay. Sometimes they're not burying it with me if I go before them, because they refuse to let that go there, but they ain't selling it. I told them if they sold that gun after I died, I would haunt their ass. like a curse. I had placed a curse upon that gun.
First of all, I want to take a moment. We'll get back to that in 1 second. Thank you, Grand Mastodon, for that amazing host. Welcome, everybody, from Grand Stream. We are doing a Mel Show podcast on collections and collectibles tonight. And we're here with my special guest, Lolidragon. Actually, Fishy, we can chat about that right after this is over because we already told the story once. Wally, why don't you do the TLDR version, the quick version of that for anybody that's joining us?
All right. So the back when I was about 12, I went with my mother to pick up an item off of Craigslist, and when I got there, I showed expressed interest in the World War II stuff and other military items that they had. And the guy who was selling stuff is so graciously offered me one of his best pieces that he had for $30, and it was a telegraph in a suitcase. A few years later, I decided I would want to know the value of it and did some research into it and found out it was a British SOE spy telegraph, and ended up selling it to a man who owned a museum in the Netherlands for about $4,000. Using that money, I decided to go and take a look around Cabela's to see what they had that I would find interesting, since I had started collecting guns at that point. This very nice stranger that I'd run into while looking at guns at Cabela's decided to help me find a good deal on a rather rare 1911 manufactured by the company Union Switch and Signal, which I forgot to mention earlier. Out of all the 1911 manufacturers of World War II, there was 5 of them. Union Switch and Signal is the second rarest. They only made about 55,000. The rarest would be this sewing company called Sanger, which made 500. And if you got one of those for $1,300, I would probably find out where you live and make that gun disappear into my hands. But anyways, the gentleman pointed out this gun to me that was worth in excess of $5,000 in very good condition, and they sold it to me for $1,300. Granted, it's not in the best condition. Finish is gone. The U.S. property mark's been scraped off. But to me, that adds more value to the gun because that was someone's personal. I stole this gun from the military, and I've had that gun ever since.
That's there's never not going to be a time when you tell that story that I'm not going to find that to be an absolutely good story. That thank you for sharing it again, and that would catch Fishy and everybody up on that's just joining us now on that particular piece that you have. I would actually have to say one of the pieces that I have is I actually have. Now this is not nerd collectible, although to some people it still will be. My grandfather, when he passed away, left me his coin collection. Now I inherited a number of 1800s, late 1800s era silver dollars from that. One of the ones I got was a Morgan silver dollar, Carson City Morgan silver dollar from 1884. Now it does have some value to it, but it's kind of one of my prized collections or prized pieces because it came to me from my grandfather. Obviously, it's a piece that I remember him by and things like that. It's one of those pieces, like I said, that I'll take to the grave with me, just because it has a special place in my heart. I don't. I mean, I have some other odds and ends here from my father when he was in the National Guard. The stuff I have from my father that will always. Thankfully, he's still with me. It's not like he's passed or anything, but the stuff I have from my father that is collectible for me, that is collectible in some circles, is the patches that he had from when he worked at the New York City Department of Corrections. My father actually retired there. We have this plaque from when he retired with his actual badge on it because he retired as assistant deputy warden, which is actually there's one. I'm going to see one day if I can get him down to talk about what it was like as that because he has some interesting stories about when he worked there over the years. He worked there during the era of Attica, the famous hostage situation that happened in the New York jail system. Didn't happen where he was, but there was similar incidents that had happened in the late 70s, the mid to late 70s, that happened while he was an officer, not as being the head of one of the jails, which is what he retired as. So that might be an interesting podcast one day to get on. We're not always going to do them about gaming or things, but we will definitely do some of that. Really, yeah, I know that headset track. I remember when you got that, when your dad brought that back for you, and you were like, "Oh my god!" And I know I've seen it. It's pretty cool. Actually, Fishy, if you want, you can post that up. When we open a section, I'm gonna put that up. If anybody that wants to post like some of their prized collectible pieces, regardless of Militaria or just like it's a comic book that holds something really space or a model that you built, whatever, we're gonna have a photo gallery for that for everybody to kind of share what they're into and their hobbies. If your hobbies are BDSM, please don't post it in there. We'll have that's a different story. I say that mainly in case Wani's listening.
That's for Wani's special room.
Mine would get see either Wani or Trixie, I tell you. He bought it on. Oh, that's right. I remember. But I remember when you got that. I remember you directly showing me a picture. Well, Fishy, we're gonna get a chance to catch up on some of that stuff too. So yes, we have a lot of things going on like that. Now I'd like to. Now I know Fishy, but for anybody else out there, what would you say? Could I post it if we? No. We'd need an NSFW channel for that. Now, some of you guys out there, I know a lot of you out there, what are your prized collectibles? What is that one thing you have that means the most to you that's maybe a part of your collection or something? What I'd like to hear some of that from you guys now, what you have. So feel free to post that in chat. I know for Shiro, it's probably going to be his Captain Marvel from 1977, his issue of that. I'm guessing, anyway. That's my guess right now. By the way, I'm pretty sure that Captain Marvel's a really good movie because Shiro's seen it 5 times already.
Good grief!
I don't understand. It's been out for less than 72 hours. Ms. Marvel from #1 from 1977 with a Mexican first appearance of Gwen Stacy. Oh wow, nice. A baby blanket from when I was born. Nice. It's near your pillow still. Saved my house. Wow. I think I've seen that blanket in some of the pictures. Wow, that's pretty cool too, Shiro. I know what Fishy's is. I know what Lolly's is. I've told you guys what mine is. Other images. Oh, gotcha. Nice. Yeah, that's true. I think for Eb Mike, it would probably be that cheese that he likes to eat so much. I don't know how he does that.
Wait, isn't that a possession that spoils?
Yeah, I don't know. He's lactose intolerant. He eats more cheese than anybody else that probably should.
That man's got a death wish.
I mean, or he must not care about the plumbing in his house.
That's true.
What's up, Proxy? How you doing? Listen, guys, I'm going to throw this out there right now. I want to take an opportunity. There's something I haven't, and I apologize about this. I haven't really had a chance to really talk to you guys a little bit about Proxy Johnny. Proxy is also, first of all, Proxy did a lot of the emotes and things for Bo's channel. He's a talented artist himself. He also streams. He plays a lot of Rainbow Six Siege, which is his main game, that is, as he said. I would really love it if you guys. Proxy has been following this channel for 3.5 years. He's been a mainstay. I remember, Proxy's one of our oldest members. Fishy's one of the other ones. I would really appreciate it if you guys would show some love to Proxy and go over, drop him a follow, check him out when he streams. Really chill dude. I actually hung out. I mean to usually catch things. Unfortunately, sometimes I'm streaming when he's streaming. But I had a chance to actually go and hang out in his chat tonight, and I really enjoyed watching him play Rainbow Six Siege. It made it actually look fun. So it was a lot of fun to hear that and to see that, and I'm so glad that he just got a new tablet, and I'm kind of trying to poke him into doing some art streams because I love watching art streams. But if you are also a streamer and are looking for another good graphic artist to do some of your emotes or help you out with stuff, I highly recommend checking out Proxy as well. We have two. We are lucky in this community to have two really good artists. Proxy's always our one of our oldest members. So make sure to at least check out his stream and check him out. I mean, look, it may have been rough, but you certainly handled it like a pro. I didn't hear salt or anything, so you guys are doing pretty good. So Japanese Type 32 cavalry saber from the 1890s. That's pretty cool, Fishy. He has a Type
That
32 cavalry saber.
is pretty cool.
Um. So yeah, I'd like to just take some time out. Now I want to throw a shout out to some of our awesome fellow streamers that are here tonight. I know we've had Grandmaster on, and as always, I want to throw a shout out to the lovely Krev. We do not have, so I've pretty much thrown up some links to everybody. Now, eventually, we're going to get Lolly here to start streaming. He's been threatening to stream for a while. I think
Threatening.
Yeah,
I think at this point you're threatening me to start streaming. Like, you better start.
Well, you expressed an interest. I'm just, putting
Yeah,
it out there.
I'm just lazy.
I know. It's okay. I'm just messing with you. But we're going to be doing more stuff like this. I want to thank you all for coming to hang out tonight. Now, it is now I want to remind everybody that since I believe unless you're in Arizona, I think everybody here is it's a jump forward. It's so we're losing an hour of sleep tonight, so it's actually kind of like closer to 1:30 because I believe it's at 2 o'clock if I'm not mistaken, Eastern time for me. That is anyway, but it'll probably do the jump everywhere. That we jump forward. So don't forget that you're going to lose an hour of sleep tonight. So I don't know if anybody has to get up for work tomorrow. I don't think you do, Fisher, because you'd be asleep already. But I just want to remind you all that that's happening. So this is my PSA to everybody that you're going to be fucked on an hour's sleep tonight. I apologize, but it's the truth. But I want to once again I want to thank you guys all for hanging out to me. This was actually a lot of fun to do. Lolly, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this.
I want to thank you for inviting me.
And and I want to thank you all for coming to watch the